everyone. We're to call the Shelton City Council meeting for March 5th, 2019 to order. Everyone turn on their mics, please, and we'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, would you like to call roll, please?
I will. Councilmember Dorsey.
Here.
Councilmember Nesco.
Here.
Councilmember Krantz.
Here.
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Present.
Councilmember McDowell.
Here.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any late changes to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask that the council move item number 3 under the action agenda, the Public Works bargaining agreement, to number 1 under the action agenda for this evening, so we can dispense with that item and have our attorney on his way.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any issues with that?
Nope.
Anything else from the council? All right, moving ahead, we'll start with council reports with Councilmember Schmidt.
Good. Hey, whoa, look at that. Changing it up. Good evening. Not much to report. Last Thursday evening, attended strategic planning meeting with our city manager as well with the Shelton Farmers Market. And it was a really constructive meeting and kind of to hear their first of 3 steps in a little bit of a planning process. And it was great to be kind of on board with that. And I'll say it's kind of in an unofficial capacity. It was just the invite I was reached out to by the president of the farmers market and entertained the meeting. It was a really good and productive meeting, and look forward to continuing an open dialogue with the farmers market. So that is all. And attending, of course, the retreat this Friday with the rest of you fine folks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Schmidt. Councilmember Dahl?
Last Friday at my weekly briefing with Jeff and Joe.
Hey.
Yes,
I was there.
Councilmember Schmidt. Yes. I also had my left board meeting this morning, and retreat this Friday with my fellow council people.
Thank you. Deputy
You're
Mayor
welcome.
Peterson?
Last week, in addition to briefings, Mayor Rogers and I had a meeting with Abe Gardner at Mason County Public Health and Bo Bakken on the opioid stakeholder, accompanied by our city manager and Chief Moody. So thank you, gentlemen. Council retreat this Friday, and I also was invited to Shelton Farmers Market next meeting, so I'll be attending that. And my next PRTPO meeting is March 15th.
Okay, thank you. Tomorrow I have a Mason County Housing Authority meeting, and also attended last week, week and a half ago, the Crossroads board meeting, and they invited a Shelton City Council member to be part of the board. And unless there's discussion and someone who wants to do it, I gladly accepted that. So is there anybody who wants to fight me over that?
You have to fight over it.
No? Yeah.
You can have it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have. Councilmember Krantz?
All right, well, I've just attended my staff briefings and study sessions, the things the city has. I'm looking forward to a retreat this Friday to discuss issues and things like that. I really want to just do a thank you to the city crews for their handling of this huge unexpected snow that we had over the past, 2 weeks? I mean, who'd have thought, you know? And I got up today, it was like 19 degrees in March, so anyway, but I just thank you very much, Public Works, whoever takes care of that stuff. You're not going to make everybody happy. I saw, just piles and piles, and what are you going to do? Where are you going to put this stuff? But I think overall, you guys did a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Nisco?
Besides our weekly briefings, I had a Housing Behavioral Health Board meeting on the 27th, and we'll be attending the retreat on Friday.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dorsey?
Really nothing more to add, except for I had a meeting at Mason Transit with Danette Brannon and the rest of the building maintenance committee, and they are planning for the future, and it was a good meeting. They're planning for the future, whether to do some remodeling or build a new building, so.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Now's the time. We'll have 2 general public comment periods, one right now and then one at the end of the meeting. We'll also have comment periods during the action and business items on those items specifically. So this is our first 3-minute comment for general comments. Donna, have anyone signed up? All right. Okay, next, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to accept the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks. Next, we'll have a presentation from Jeanette Brannon from Mason Transit Authority.
Well, thank you for having me come. Tonight I'd like to update a couple of our projects that we have going on within the city of Shelton. This here is our Pear Orchard Park and Ride, which is just as you turn on SR3, where there's just now gravel. We use this parking lot for our worker drivers. They get picked up there in the morning. And as you know, it's just gravel and not attractive. So this is what it's going to look like when it is completed. We are making some adjustments here for a pathway to come through as we for future development there. So we're going to adjust the landscape there. But other than that, this will have security, lighting, and then here our bus will use this as turnaround pickup point right here. We're real excited. We did open bids on this on Friday, so we are working out our contract negotiations right now. I was very pleased with the bids. So we should see this probably work starting in May, and it's about probably an 8 to 12 week time frame on it. So I think by the end of December we'll see this project completed. This is right over here by where United Way is in our Transit Community Center. This project we've been working on for a very long time. It's hopefully going to get done. It will, as you can see, it'll have a pathway now, a paved pathway that's between Blondie's and the United Way building, as well as like a patio area. There'll be electric vehicle charging stations there. You'll to be able to charge 3 vehicles, as well as very nice landscaping. And this is it's like a stormwater management system using permeable pavers to protect the water quality. So we have a grant with the Department of Ecology, and the City of Shelton is managing that grant for us. So we're real excited. We hope we're going to have some additional cleanup, but once that is done, we hope to be able to start this project in the later summer. And it has a pretty short time span for the project, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So should see both of these projects completed by the end of the summer.
So are those the trees on the bottom there?
Yes,
Those are what will be planted?
yes, in the different locations there, yeah.
What kind are those?
This is a dwarf magnolia and I have no idea how to say that word, Stewardia, and paperback maple. So only one that sheds, I believe, is the maple. We didn't want a whole lot of excess leaves and cleanup, so they're only the maple will shed.
That's going to really add a nice place for downtown.
Yeah, it'll be really nice when it's done. I think we have some additional planting over along the path there as well. So.
Danette, would you open for questions? Obviously you are.
Yeah.
So any questions for Danette?
Nope.
All right. Oh, Joe.
No questions, just thank you. This is great. Any chance that things get paved and also, sustainable vegetation and things like that around the area look great. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing this happen, especially on the heels of other construction downtown. So, thank you for that.
Great. You're welcome.
Thank you, Danette, for coming tonight. Okay. We're going to move on to our business agenda. Has anyone signed up for any business agenda items tonight? Thank you, Donna. Okay, first item is for Mark Ziegler, Community Development Director, information about purchasing some vehicles.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Bringing to you today the brief on placement of 2 vehicles within community development. One is for the building department, and one is for the parks department, the parks maintenance staff. So these are vehicles that were presented to the city manager and council in the formulation of the 2019 budget, and they were approved within the 2019 budget. But our current purchasing policies require the council approval for purchases over this threshold. So the parks, or excuse me, the building department vehicle would replace our current, I need to look at it again, 1999 Ford Ranger, about 105,000 miles on it. Small vehicle, doesn't allow for much storage space, and it's getting to its life expectancy. I think, as you'll see with Craig's presentation coming up, right after mine with a couple vehicles, you get to that 100,000 mile marker close to it within the city limits. It's really a lot of wear and tear on these vehicles, and they really start wearing down. It's a lot of maintenance and upkeep that's required to keep these things on the road. That would be replaced with a Ford Escape through the state procurement process. The Parks Department vehicle would replace a 1997 Ford F-150, 91,500, around 92,000 miles on it now, with a Ford F-250, and both of these vehicles would be under the approved budget amounts for 2019.
I like those words, under budget amount. Sounds good.
Okay. Comments, questions for,
How do we decide where we buy these vehicles? I noticed that we're at Longview.
State procurement. So the state receives bids, open bids, and then the city is able to purchase on that procurement list. So it saves us from going out to bid individually on these vehicles, and it tends to be a greater market, better price because of volume, because these dealers are selling these specific vehicles to the entire state at the agreed upon prices per the, with the options included. So there's a base price for the vehicle, and then you basically build the vehicle with the options, and gives you the sales price. So these dealerships essentially win the award for these types of vehicles throughout the state. So they're selling them on volume.
any other questions?
Comment and a question. Just like to say again that I'm very eager for us to get to a place where we have an ER&R and EM&R, so we don't get to a place where we're looking at replacing full cost of vehicles and not having that planned in advance. So appreciate continued conversation with the council and staff on that. Looking at the prices here, I anticipate there's also going to be some cost involved with the city decals and equipment and communications, et cetera, that will go into the vehicles. Is that made up in the difference between this price and the budget, or is that carried in a different area?
Since these are replacing, we'd swap the communication devices, the radios over. The decals, yeah, that'd be another cost, and licensing certainly would be another cost as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Mark? Okay, we concur to move this item to action item in March 19th meeting. All right,
Yes.
okay. Next, also vehicles for Public Works Director Craig Gregory.
Thanks, Mayor, council members. So I won't go back through state procurement and what Mark already explained. We followed the same procedure with Public Works and EM&R. 3 vehicles, 2 replacements, and 1 new. The new vehicle would be in the stormwater department. And really, the simple fact for looking at increased employee levels in the future and increased activity with the new Phase 2 stormwater permit that is coming in June of this year is the reason for budgeting of the stormwater vehicle. And then 2 replacements, one in the water department, replacing a very old vehicle, a 2001, and then a replacement also an EM&R. And unfortunately, two of our vehicles, slightly over budget, we had figured in for 2018 prices when we looked at these and budgeted for them with an increase for inflation. But unfortunately, some of the utility boxes and some of the other accessories that go on these vehicles went up a little bit more than we had first anticipated. So you'll see that the water department vehicle is about $640 over budget. The stormwater vehicle, about $875 over budget, and then the EM&R did come in a little less than $3,000 under budget. So some of those add-ons for those utility boxes and pipe racks and things like that went up a little more than we anticipated is the reason for the cost overrun for those two out of the three vehicles.
But the EM&R Ford, you came on, saved a little bit there.
It was budgeted at 40,000 and came in at
Okay.
just over 37,000,
Okay.
correct?
Questions for Craig? And the analysis said you're going to keep all three of the old vehicles? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then the question goes to Deputy Mayor's question, are we buying new gear for those trucks?
We are.
Okay, so all the
We
trucks
will
will
have
be rigged?
radios and decals, things like that, yes.
Okay, was that budgeted for, Craig?
We'll have to absorb that through the funds in operations, most likely.
Okay. Okay, other questions?
This may not, I don't know, just a question, is it a requirement to have a decal on a vehicle?
I think overall image for the city of Shelton and identifying those vehicles, I certainly think we would want to do that.
Okay.
Certainly not a requirement.
I mean, that's not the bank breaker, of course. That's
No,
not the
you're
point, but,
talking, you're talking very little cost for those.
And Counselor, if I might, one of the things that we're going to look at and talk about during the 2020 budgeting process is potential for a new branding and marketing campaign. And it's likely that if these purchases go through, we would hold off applying new decals and those types of materials to these new purchases until we've settled on keeping our current branding strategy.
Got a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Adding to the fleet, understand replacement of aging equipment. Of course, there comes a point where it's not worth the maintenance anymore. However, adding to the fleet, have we adequately covered the cost of ongoing maintenance and sustainment of that vehicle for the next couple of years once now we're adding up, oil changes and tires and brakes and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, those are all things that we have looked at and we'll continue to look at. And when the maintenance costs outstrip the usefulness, we'll look at surplusing those.
Okay. That's all.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
All right. Do you have consensus to move this forward to the action agenda for March 19th? Okay.
Yes.
Next are action agenda items. Anything for public comment
I do
tonight?
not have anything.
Okay, so our first item in the agenda is item 3, which is the bargaining contract with Public Works and Parks bargaining agreement, and Peter Altman from Summit Law Group will present.
Sure, I can go over the information that's in the packet, and then
Okay.
if we have any questions, we'll follow the procedure we
Okay.
discussed, and if not, we can move forward. The city, along with Mr. Altman, negotiated a 3-year agreement between the city and the Shelton Employees Guild, representing all the full-time and part-time employees in Public Works and Parks, excluding the supervisors. The changes to the payroll deduction and the guild membership provisions reflect the federal court ruling known as the Janus decision. And in addition to the language included in the Washington State paid sick leave statute that was effective January 1 of 2018, is included. The general increases for over the 3-year contract term are 4.5% in 2019, then down to 2% in 2020, and 3% in 2021. A few other things to mention. The city's contribution to the medical insurance premiums go from $1,350 up to $1,500 this year, $1,550 in 2020, and $1,575 in 2021. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or I'm sure Mr. Altman would be available too if there are any more substantive questions.
I'll just, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
As a matter of procedure, we need the motion in a second before any conversation, so I'll go ahead and just get that started.
Okay.
I move to approve the agreement between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Employees Guild, representing all full-time and part-time employees in the Public Works and Parks Department, excluding supervisors, professional, confidential, and clerical employees, for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Now, are there any questions for Jeff or for Peter? I've just one historical question, just because you mentioned the pay raises in the contract. The prior contract with Public Works and Parks was during the time when the city was in fairly dire straits, and you want to address what those were?
So the information I have is that the previous contract was a 1%, 1%, 1%. So looking to make that bargaining unit a fair deal with that bargaining unit.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Okay. All right, seeing nothing else, we have a motion and a second to approve the agreement between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Employees Guild, representing the full-time and part-time employees of the Public Works and Parks Department, excluding supervisors, professional, confidential, and clerical employees for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. All in favor of approving that contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, we're now back to the first item on our agenda, which is Director Ziegler has details about real estate broker services.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm bringing to you again today the same briefing that presented on February 5th, seeking action on a real estate broker services contract.
Okay, so we have discussion, or do we, we're gonna have to have a discussion for the motion because we need to determine who we're gonna go with. So, discussion, please.
Well, I am, after reviewing this and discussing with staff, I'm comfortable moving forward with Mr. Beckman based on his local real estate knowledge and experience in the community and working with our local partners as well. I feel that's going to be the best fit for the city moving forward.
I agree.
Have any discussion on that?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's just, I'd not understood it when we first started this, that the bidding process would go out to other realtors in different counties and whatnot and stuff. And so I do know that we continually say shop local. And so here's a prime example of, you know, us shopping local. And so I think it is the right thing to do to use a local person to do that. So I would support that idea.
Okay,
Well,
so,
and above and beyond that, I think the idea of not only investing locally, but in the unique expertise and knowledge that comes with the Mason County market and its frequent changes and challenges, I'm very comfortable with staff's recommendation and appreciate the background you gave us on the process we walked through to get to that recommendation.
okay, so do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Mr. Beckman for real estate broker services for the city through December 31st, 2020. Sorry.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to authorize me to sign a contract with Richard Beckman for real estate broker services for the city through December 31st, 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next action item is to interim finance director Terry Snitzer for information about an amendment to the indirect cost allocation plan contract.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, a couple weeks ago, I brought to you an amendment to the FCS group who are completing our indirect cost allocation model, and we're asking for an amendment to the contract in the amount of $5,045 to perform a stakeholders meeting with all the departments so they're better understanding of the model, because there was quite a few changes from the original model that was done for us back in years ago. So we're asking council to authorize the city manager to sign the amendment.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve amendment number 1 to the FCS group contract for the indirect cost allocation plan update.
Second?
Okay, further discussion or questions for Terry?
One question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
What is the anticipated, when are we anticipating this being wrapped up?
Like within probably a week.
Sounds good.
Yes.
And I will, when is the user group, not a user group meeting, but stakeholders meeting
That was, it was,
coming up, or?
yeah,
already?
there was it last, when did we have it?
There was a preliminary one, and I believe there will
Yes.
be another one scheduled that the council, will let the council know when that happens. If you choose to attend, I'll just first come, first serve, three or less.
Okay, all right.
Yes, there's still training to do for staff, so at time, yes.
Okay,
And just a note, I really appreciate the work that staff has done on working through this, because with the recent changes in departments and structure and taking the garbage contract out of it, there's been significant changes in making sure that our staff is well equipped to understand the model so that we are accurately reflecting these things. It's going to be incredibly important as we move forward with the budgeting process. So just a nod to all of you for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
thank you, Deputy Mayor.
One last comment to follow up. I understand the 3-touch policy, but understanding as well that this is going to be wrapped up in a week. This is probably something we could have moved along a little bit quicker, so just being cognizant of that in the future. I think we're amenable to being reasonable there, so thanks.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve amendment number 1 to the FCS group contract for indirect cost allocation plan update. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, next is we have no general public comment even now?
Have any at all.
Okay. So we'll move on to administration reports. City Manager Jeff Knighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, members of the public. I'll just keep it brief and then turn it over to Chief Moody for an update on our code enforcement. I'm looking forward to a retreat on Friday to be able to outline some strategic goals for the city moving forward. I think that'll be a very good process for all of us, give all of us some clarity about the future of Shelton. The second part, another future of Shelton, is I'd like to introduce our new HR manager, Michelle Sutherland, all the way from the Great White North beyond the wall.
Where is that?
Michigan.
Michigan. Oh,
Up-
Michigan.
Upper Peninsula.
Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Drove through miles and miles of ice and snow to get here, and we're very thankful that she is, none more so, I'm sure, than Pam, who this will be her last council meeting with us. So I would like to tell Pam how much I've appreciated her help, especially first coming on board and giving me some of the background, and wouldn't be able to do a lot of things without her. So I really appreciate that, and we're going to miss her. So.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
And then Chief Moody has a code enforcement update for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I gave you all packets that kind of give you some stat breakdown of what's been going on in the last few months. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of where code enforcement's at and what we're doing. All the officers now have received preliminary code enforcement training, so we're all by default becoming code enforcement officers throughout the department. They're learning that our Muni Code has some wonderful tools in it to be able to help out in the community. They've been able to go out and enforce some of the things, and in your packet you have One of our major projects we're working on in a house on Coda Street that has been a problem for a while. And I have to say, Code Enforcement Officer Belleville has issued 3 citations to this house. And just so you know how the Muni Code is working, enforcement is our last tool. Compliance is where we try to get. He's issued letters, warnings, et cetera. Past 3 citations for the nuisance abatement process, it becomes a misdemeanor. So this is our first testing ground as we move forward with the code enforcement. We've met with the city prosecutor, and I think we're on pretty level ground as we keep moving forward with this, but this will be a major project that will continue. On that same note, the good news and the bad news is we're losing our community service officer, James Belleville, who's getting sworn in as a police officer at the next council meeting. So by default, he will be our code enforcement specialist / police officer now at the city of Shelton. And on the good news of that is we recently submitted a job offer to a candidate for code enforcement who has some experience in law enforcement and is coming over to this and is excited to be here. We'll be getting you further information on that, but we hope to have that person on board by the beginning of the month in April. So we'll be doing some training there and keep continuing with the process through that. On other good news, there is a house in the 400 block of East Street that many of you know has been a problem for a long time. And with the help of Public Works and Planning and Marks Department building, we're moving forward with the demolition of that house and the cleanup. And the city will be leaning the property through the bank, I believe, right, Mark? Is it through the bank? Yeah. So I'd happy to answer any questions you got about code enforcement. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Kranz?
I just want to thank you very much for, this has been something we've kind of been talking about for a number of years, and it's not easy for cities, especially when you have a certain number of police officers that need to, you know, do a lot of stuff. But I know there was one issue that you and I talked about a while back, and that is no longer an issue. That through dealing with the homeowner, the owner of property, and then another person and stuff, that it was cleaned up and is no longer a problem. And so I think it's really important for our citizens to know that we are, it's not easy when you're dealing with personal property to do that. We've had that conversation many times, but I see a great improvement in that area, and I think our citizens want to continue to make Shelton a nicer, cleaner, a more respectable place to live. And I know you guys gotta work double time and then triple time to do that. Your hard work is recognized in the community, and from this council person, very much thank you for the work that you're doing.
Officer Belleville's done a good job because he was put into the position with zero knowledge of code enforcement. And so he has worked with Jason and Mark's department, and he's got a big learning curve that'll move on now to a police officer, which I think will be beneficial in that position as well. And we have him as a resource to rely on as the new one comes on board.
Any other questions for Chief or comments?
Park Street, how far down is that? I mean, when did this happen? Seems like I just drove up that street a few weeks ago.
That photo's probably 2 weeks old.
Okay.
You know, and like I said, enforcement is the last thing we try to do. Compliance is what we try to accomplish. And quite often, like Mr. Krantz said, a lot of it is just meeting the people and going out and having conversation, finding out who actually owns the property, telling them that, you know, the neighbors are complaining on a regular basis. This is a problem. How do we help you accomplish that? Last year, Officer Belleville was out on another issue where the person was just overrun and didn't know what to do. And we accomplished getting a dumpster delivered and helping them get that taken care of without writing any citations.
And Chief, if I could address a question either to you or to Mark, whichever would be appropriate. If someone in the community has an issue that they think is a question of enforcement, how do they go about contacting city staff or contacting the city for that?
Well, I'll give a portion, Mark can give a portion as well, because Mark's kind of the conduit that it comes to, because sometimes code enforcement ends up being a planning or a building issue, which is not necessarily our expertise. So they can go online and do it. They can send us emails to Mark or I. They are welcome to call the police department or dispatch and go through there. But Mark usually receives those in as they come in, either the handwritten or the emails that come in or the online reporting, and Mark will determine whether that becomes a planning issue, a building issue, or a police department issue. Is that?
Yeah, Specific to nuisance code, the community development director is responsible for administering that. So that can, as Chief Moody said, that can be several different arenas. It can be, it can be building, it can be it can be a nuisance like tall grass or garbage in the yard, something like that. So we can take those complaints over the phone. We do have a written form on the city's website or in person here. We will fill that out as staff here for individuals or residents that want to just call in and give us that information over the front counter. So it's as simple as calling customer service, fill that out, we'll route it to the appropriate people, and then we'll track that. So we've got a system in place where we know when it comes in, it'll go to the appropriate department. In this case, if it's a nuisance violation, we'll hand it off to the police department, and then Officer Belleville will move it through the process, trying to get voluntary compliance first, obviously, and then working towards enforcement after that.
And like Mark said, sometimes these can go to several departments at the same time. We get one complaint where they may have an issue that is actually a building or a planning complaint, and they have the additional garbage in the front yard or the long weeds that would need to be taken care of, so we can split it up in team effort.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's go to the world where it all gets cleaned up. Do you check on these places after they get it?
There's a file kept at each address that he goes to of anything he does, from just contacting people to, enforcement action to writing letters to them. Jason keeps a file upstairs, I know, it's for his issues that he deals with. So it doesn't have a person attached to it, it has a property attached to it. So as the new code enforcement comes on and we start training there, that person will be able to go into the files and say, okay, at XYZ address, here's what we've done thus far. And here's what they've accomplished thus far.
So you go back and check on the property?
It's a continuing case,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Couple questions. I'll start with one and kick it over. But the Park Street, obviously photos are telling. So on the Park Street example here, what's sort of, can you walk me through like the timeline here? So you get a complaint, the next time Officer Belleville's on shift, he makes a contact or something, and then.
In the perfect world, we go out, knock on the door and say, clean up your property, and it's cleaned up. That's not often the case. So first is we make contact, we find out who the property owner is. Usually Jason and the code enforcement officer work closely together to go, okay, who's the property owner? How long have they owned the property? What have we sent out before previously? And then we start a process, and it starts by talking. And it starts by talking to the neighbors as well as the person in that residence. The owner of the property might not be necessarily the person that lives there. So if we have a rental, we will contact the owner and let them know we're receiving complaints of your property, and it's your responsibility to take care of it. Please remedy that. We have form letters that we will send out following that that says, we've contacted you on these dates to do this. We've seen no progress in anything you've done. Quite often, if people are doing just a little bit of progress, we'll just keep, like Councilwoman McDowell said, we'll just keep contacting, going, thank you for doing that little bit. Now how about this little bit more? And we keep documenting it with letters, reports, and information. They're each assigned a case number that'll come through. And then if it gets to the point where the progress stops or there was no progress, then we can take other steps into that involve the Muni Code. And that can involve citations and fines attached to it.
And to follow up, I know private property matters are obviously a delicate,
Yes.
delicate dance, and rightfully so. However, just from the first photo here on the Park Street example, I can spot a few different life safety hazards, not just to the people living there, but the abutting property owners. Is there any policy or municipal code level support to more aggressively handle anything that is deemed a life safety issue?
We've tried to partner, and we're continuing to partner with the health department and with the fire department for fire marshal services. We continue to explore those options with other departments outside ourselves. And I've had conversations with the city manager Knighton about going through our city code in the future and adopting city codes that other cities or municipalities have had success with that can help with the situation. Yeah. And you're right, it varies city to city, but quite often the nuisance abatement problems become the longest problems to resolve because you're dealing with somebody's home. and you're dealing with going onto their property and telling them what to do to their property.
Anything else for the chief or for Mark? Okay, thank you very much,
You bet.
Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item is new items or discussion for the council tonight. Councilmember Kranz?
Well, this is a little early, because this isn't gonna happen for about 8 or 9 months, but I was delving into some information this week, and I found out through the grapevine that this particular building that we are sitting in, which looks like a brand-new, wonderful, beautiful civic center, its last payment is somewhere around November of 2019. That's this year.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That is, I would call that a milestone, because it was an investment. It's something, a center that's used by us. It's used by the community. It's a great facility, and that, to have that, and have that totally paid for, I think is worth a party. You could call it an open house. You could call it a celebration. But being one who is I'm really much in favor of like those 7-layer chocolate cakes. I keep bringing this back to, I know you're not supposed to eat a lot of them, but, if I'm like 10 months out, 9 months out, and if it was like, we got one of those, I just feel that, this is an accomplishment. I mean, we paid payments for whatever, 20, 25 years. How many?
Probably 20.
Something like that. And we did it. It's like, your boat or your truck, like Joe's got a truck, I don't know what that thing costs, but man, I mean, we could probably mix his party in with our party when he pays that one off. But I just feel that this is good use of the citizens' funds, the ratepayers' funds, and that, at that opportunity, it's, just the whole society wants to continue to go farther than what they can really live on and buy things they can't afford and stuff. This was an investment. We're paying for it. We're using it. And I would highly recommend that we just continue to use this for a long time and not have that monthly payment. And that is something that I think is worth celebrating, especially with that 7-layer chocolate cake.
Okay. The mayor duly noted, I'm sure the city manager also did. So, Councilmember Dorsey.
And I would like to add to that, I think I could probably get agreement from all 7 council members and probably Jeff, that we put the new HR person in charge of that party.
I concur.
There you go.
Cookies, please.
Anything else this evening from anyone?
Chocolate cake.
Okay.
I hope she can bake.
Our next regular meeting will be March 19th at 6 o'clock. We're adjourned.